All right, everyone having a good time. This is day two, making history is what's going on here. So it's exciting. It's really exciting. And coming into this panel, Exposing Scientism, it's really an incredible thing to put together a project, Scientism Exposed to. It was awesome being able to travel around, meet with the people that are going to be coming up on the stage really quickly. Um, and again, we had so many amazing, discussions and putting what you're going to see tonight later on, Scientism Exposed 2. It's the worldwide premiere, and I'm so incredibly excited. I don't know, it's hard sometimes when you're doing this and seeing the excitement of just the conference, but it's like double. You have a double because again, you have this, which is so massive, but then you have the opportunity to do a premiere of something that you've worked on so hard. You've been able to be with people that have touched you, that you've learned from, that's been part of your journey, and then to allow everyone to come on along that journey with me as I traveled around and to get deeper into this topic, scientism. And for me, it's so much more. Now, I was interviewed with a lot of media, and for me, it's a lot more than the shape of the Earth. And I think for a lot of us, after we get to a certain point, it's just like it's not really about the shape of the Earth. It's more about something a lot bigger going on. And so that's why I really wanted to come up with Scientism Exposed, not only for that and getting addressing scientism versus science, but also having people realize, that they have been lied to, but have it in a way that they could give it to people. So I did it in a way as a tool, as an outreach tool that may maybe not scare someone away because it says flat Earth. Because for most people, I mean, this is the upper echelon of crazy, right? So sometimes you got to gradually just work them in. It's like figure out, hey, that's interesting. I'm gonna look into that. And then one thing leads to the next. Because well, maybe it took us, 2 months or 2 seconds or 2 years to get to this. Some people it might take a whole lifetime. We don't. Everyone kind of operates at a different level. So, but anyways, it was exciting to be able to put Scientism Exposed to. It's amazing to me that not only do I get to premiere a film, but again, the people that were in the film get to be here to see it the first time with me. So be able to experience that is just a phenomenal reality. And then also, with my conference director, John Gabrielson, and Rick Hummer is the MC, they're also in it, right? So again, we got them all on the stage. And again, not only did they contribute and help so much making the film for what it was, but also they've helped so much here. So, huge hand to, everyone that's kind of put the conference, made everything what it is. I mean, I want to first of all say that because I need to recognize that because it's so incredibly important to me. And again, they've come together not just on the project, but also getting this all together and making it flow the way it has. And it's been awesome. Like, I mean, it's been amazing. Every element, it's going, time, computers are working, very little interruptions. It's great. So I'm really excited about it. It's awesome. So it's with my great pleasure. I'm going to announce people that we're going to talk a little bit about that subject called scientism. So I want to call up Rob Skiba, Joe Taylor, Rick Hummer, John Gabrielson, and Pastor Dean Odell. Get it all settled and everything. It's kind of obviously no rehearsal with this, but hey, we're going to get it going for sure right away. But it's awesome. Like I said,
we have to see the sign.
exactly, exactly. So you guys can like pull the mics off. You can kind of hand it to one another. I think that's the best way. If you want to just pull the mic off, Rob, and then just you guys can pass it. When we kind of talk about different questions. But yeah, I mean, to be here, obviously, with John Gabrielson, and John Gabrielson, I got to know him by, it was Scientism Exposed, my first film, and he brought me down to his conference. And it's interesting that basically the first time meeting him was at his conference, and now he's directing my conference in the sense of this, how it all works out, how it's all orchestrated, how it comes together. It's just a phenomenal thing. Obviously, Rob Skiba, just absolutely incredible to meet him, and get all the input. And yeah, it's just, you guys are in for a real treat tonight. I'm so incredibly happy for how everything turned out. Joe Taylor, I had time to spend with him And the interesting thing with Joe, and I think tonight when we go through this discussion a little bit, is while he's done incredible work exposing scientism with paleontology and archaeology, this topic, intrigued him. But he came to the conference to learn more. He's not a believer yet, but he's like, I'm intrigued. I want to learn more about these things. So I think we're going to hear, from Joe based on what he's seeing, in this journey, looking into this more, coming here and exploring that. And then with Pastor Dean Odell being able to come down to Alabama and hang out in the Alabama heat and to really come in with all the stuff that was there. It was just a great time. And obviously with Rick Hummer, we've got very close. He's assisted in so many different ways. It was awesome for him to contribute and then also, be a part of a lot of the things, whether it was the AV or different things that I needed. Rick's really become really close and a dear brother for sure. So yeah, I want to just say let's start it off with the scientism. I thought it would be interesting to kind of run down the panel and basically, in just a kind of a short way, just maybe we'll start with John Gabrielson, and what for you, what's scientism?
Well, when I first met Robbie and saw the topic of scientism, it really intrigued me because I'd never really stopped to think about, okay, what's the difference between science? And I've heard people say theoretical physicists and theoretical this and theory this, and everything became theories. So I started realizing, it's really like a religion. Science is no different than any other religion. And so it started me on my research, and that's how I ran across Robbie. And so, when I think of scientism, I just think of it as a religion, not as real science, because it's not real science. I mean, if you go in, my son, and he's 18 now, and he's a flat earther, as I am. And when he first came to this truth, he would start doing all the formulas, and he was going to his teachers who were teaching these theories, and he's like, well, you know what? Here's the theory, the mathematics behind the curvature of the Earth. Well, how can you explain me seeing certain things? And he said the teachers would give him silly answers or just ignore him. He never got in trouble, but he just kept questioning. And so, as you start to question scientism, you begin to realize they have no answers. Where science is repeatable, you can assert some theory, then you can prove it, and you can prove it over and over and over again. We see this with all the experiments that Jaron's done, that Rob's done, that Rick's done, that you guys have all done, that I've done. So, that's the difference. It's real science where we can go out and actually see it, feel it, believe it, and then relive it and recreate it over and over again versus these theories that are just ad hoc. And they just keep piling on each other to come up with another silly theory to plug the hole of the earlier theory.
Yeah, well said, John. Ditto. No, what John said. We have William Shatner, Captain Kirk himself, right, saying science today is science fiction. And he said that. He went around interviewing people, Michio Kaku and others. He's like, what do you do? It's only Shatner can do it, And he came away with, it's all in his head. The guy's just making stuff up, equations and whatnot, and it's all in his head, all these theoretical physicists and whatnot. It's just, scientism is just, like you said, it's a religion. It's conjured up in these people's minds, meant to justify whatever preconceived bias they have. You have Tesla, I showed you the slide before, and others have talked about it, where he's like, today's scientists in his day are wandering off into equation after equation until they build something that has no basis in reality. And that's where the difference is. The Apostle Paul called it science falsely so called. And I think that's what we're dealing with scientism.
In paleontology is rife with, or the study of paleontology is rife with half-truths and a lot of speculation and a lot of art. It's not that they don't deal in scientific things. They have laboratories and things like that. But there's a lot of imagination, and imagination is not science. Imagination might be the springboard to get a scientific program going, but it's not itself science. So it becomes the basis for a belief system. And once it's ensconced, which it is in most universities and most national museums, etc., your paycheck becomes susceptible to what you agree to. And I've been told this many times, I've said it many times, that if you go against the current paradigm, and they've told me about the paradigms, they admit they're there, you could lose your job. Well, most people are not going to lose their job. And like the Bible says, the love of money is the root of all evil. And I think it starts there.
Well, what I appreciate, of course, when I started years ago preaching as a young man. I did a lot of preaching and ministry and witnessing and trying to talk to people about Jesus on college campuses. And when you do that, you're going to have to confront these issues. And so I've been debating stuff like evolution and things like that for many years. But for me, I look at it and I see in the news, like you can look up the latest Pew Research and you see where religion in general, not just Christianity, but belief in God is in decline. And in fact, the people that say they have no religion, none, they have no belief, is growing faster than anything, and particularly in America and the West. And when they narrowed down, the number one reason was the theories of science and cosmology and evolution and all these things. And more people are believing these theories as fact when, of course, many of them haven't been proven. They're just ideas. They're just theories. They're just, speculation. And so I see it particularly for the church. And I'm talking about the true church of Jesus. I'm not talking about Rome or anywhere else. We see the Pope even pushing evolution and the Big Bang and aliens and everything else. So there's a true church, there's a false church. But I see this is the David and Goliath of our era, that we have to, like David, step up to the plate with not just a Bible verse, but with real answers, real evidence, real concrete science, true science, the truth. And that's why, I think the flat earth issue and the true nature of cosmology is so important to this generation. I think about my kids. I have a daughter that's at the University of Alabama in Birmingham, being taught this stuff, but she's solid, she knows, and she wanted to be here today. She couldn't, but I think about her. I think about the next generation, that we're going to be in trouble we're going to be in worse trouble than we are if we keep heading down this road of exalting scientism and this religion of science versus just truth, just reality. So that's where it is for me.
I skipped a lot of classes,
The classical.
and I'm thankful. I am so glad I was a C student. And thank you, Edward Karst, wherever you are in the world, for letting me look over your shoulder to get by, or I would have been the class of 99 instead of 90. No, with me, scientism is, to me, it's the religion of excuses. It's the religion of, yeah, but. And I'm still waiting to find out, where does this macro evolution, now let me get smart for a second, a little bit. Micro versus macro evolution. They don't want to touch base that one kind has never turned into another kind. But they give you the diagram of the chimpanzee slowly coming up off the knuckles, walking, but they never show you the chimpanzee going backwards. They never show you what was the chimp before that, and before that, before that, before that. They can't give you that. They just give you a piece of a puzzle that's nothing but chaos. And they give you excuses. Yeah, but. So when we look at this, and like the things that you've dug up, the things that you're looking at, it is artwork. I mean, they're making dinosaurs out of one bone. So when you look at this and you say, okay, well, what does this mean? Well, we've been taught this, the education system. Well, the education system hasn't changed in 150 years. It's the same principle. It's the same policy. It's the same movement. One person, rows and rows of students, follow this book. Don't go off of it. Don't go off the page, or you're going to get an F. It's that simple. So with me, with scientism, yeah, there's no evidence of one kind turning into another with evolution. And there's definitely, I don't believe in aliens. I know that things are happening, but that's really come into play. That's become science. Like you said, Dean. You know, the Vatican's mentioned we should welcome our space brothers in. And maybe we can baptize them unless they are here to teach us something more than we know. Well, man, what book are you reading? What is your foundation on? You know, so, you know, it's about facts. And science with an S isn't bringing them. It's just telling you that they're facts, and they're not when you test them. Not all the time. So there you go.
Absolutely, and I think it is a good way to segue to talk to Joe a little bit, because I think, you know, spending all the years that he has exposing scientism when it comes to archaeology or paleontology, I think it would be important maybe to start there, because we will move more into cosmology and the shape of the Earth, and it'll be fascinating to hear from Joe what he's gathering from being here and learning, because he really desires to learn the truth and he really wants to understand it. So to me, it's a really incredible opportunity. But again, you've spent a lot of time with archaeology and all of these facets. Maybe you could kind of go and explain the three big areas that you kind of, you know, with all of your work, you've spent a long time exposing and that they're trying to hide.
I've worked in mostly in paleontology, a lot in geology, archaeology. And to me, really, everything is archaeology, because there's nothing that isn't recorded in the Bible that's history. So our entire history has been, there's nothing prehistory, although they say that. You sort of have to look at all those together. I was just in Israel for a couple of weeks, and one of my reasons for being there was to record the geology of the entire state, which we pretty well did. What I wanted to show was most of Israel is made up of sedimentary rock, mostly limestone, some sandstone, and that most of the buildings in Israel are built out of that same stuff. So how can they be older than the rock they're made out of? And all that rock, it's so much of it, there's like 2,000 feet, there's some estimates, from the top of the state down to the bottom where the road's down to the basement rock. It's all flat layers until it gets bent and rumpled from the earth moving around during and after the flood. So all these dates that they give in archaeology that say, well, here's a ruins we found here that's 8,500 years old. No, it's not. And it won't fit the Bible. If they would figure in the flood and what the flood did to the geology of Israel, they wouldn't come up with these fantastic dates that all fit in with what the Bible timeline is. And that's the problem. Anything that agrees with the Bible is going to make people think the Bible is valid. Therefore, that's going to make the law of God valid, and that's the problem. As soon as you validate the history of the Bible, now you've validated the do's and don'ts. That's the problem.
Amen.
Maybe, Rob, you can maybe talk about the aspects of, before you came to this subject matter, what area of scientism were you most aggressive with, you know, showing the craziness or the fact that it wasn't holding up to the scientific method before you came to, you know, getting into cosmology and flat Earth?
That would go all the way back to, as I mentioned in my presentation, Kent Hovind came through town, my little Baptist church in Chicopee, Massachusetts, and gave his week-long creation versus evolution seminar. And I got the whole, I think it was a 12 VHS set. I remember VHS back in the day. And I actually recorded all the VHS to audio cassette, and I would listen to it religiously, interestingly enough, in my car until I practically had it memorized, and then would go out and use that material to talk to my friends. And used to drive my teachers crazy, because whenever I would be forced to take the secular school test to pass. So they'd ask, you know, how old is the Earth? Well, I mean, to graduate and to get the grade, I have to answer what the textbook said. So I would say, well, according to the textbook, 4.6 billion years, despite the fact that. So,
I'm glad I didn't sit behind you in class.
yeah, you would have had a hard time looking over my shoulder, like, what's the answer? It's a book.
Just put down B, man.
Yeah. So it took me a little longer to finish my test. And, you know, they were forced to give me the grade, even though I really frustrated them, because I did answer what they wanted, but I was letting them know that I didn't believe it. So that would be my probably earliest introduction to scientism, is what was being pushed on us. And I was the kid in 5th grade that said, well, if we came from monkeys, how come there's still monkeys? And nobody's ever been able to answer that question. So then, later in life, my research went into the subject of Genesis 6, just like Pastor Dean talked about. That's been something that has been of interest to me for a long time. I mean, what kid isn't interested in giants, right? I mean, we all have the various myths and stories and legends and stuff like that. And when you see that it's actually in the Bible, I mean, David and Goliath, yeah, but there's way more than just David and Goliath going on there. So I'd spent a number of years doing some real intense research on what I call the Genesis 6 experiment, what took place there. And, that led to meeting people like Joe here and going to his his fossil museum. And it's a replica, right? The big femur bone there of a human femur bone. And looking through history and seeing how any evidence of the giants has been done away with. Like, the Smithsonian, Vatican, somebody shows up and this stuff just disappears. Because why? I mean, it validates scripture, but it nullifies the standard model. So, and when you look at what the standard model, I mean, it is truly a religion. And it's a religion of intolerance. Have you guys seen the documentary Expelled? No Intelligence Allowed? If you haven't, you need to check it out. Ben Stein, I used a clip from that in my presentation where Ben Stein's interviewing Professor Richard Dawkins. And you see throughout that film how there are real scientists out there who recognize that there is real evidence that's contrary to whatever the standard paradigm is that's being pushed, but they can't talk about it. I mean, they will be expelled, and as others have said, and that's not right. So it's been a long journey, but for me, most of it dealt with evolution as a whole, and what we're talking about here at this conference is just one more piece of the puzzle for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll move over to Pastor Dean, and just if there's a certain area, when it comes to any area of scientism, before you even come to this subject matter, what was one of the strongest kind of proofs that you were seeing that basically we were being taught lies?
Well, I'd have to say it was probably, again, it's evolution was always been the biggest for me. And like I said, preaching on college campuses, we used to go up sometimes and I would preach at Harvard and William and Mary and Boston College, and boy, it gets intense, those places. And then the one time I debated the president of the Auburn University debate team, and his specialty was atheism. So, we had quite fun. So that was really, it was evolution then. It really didn't get into, of course, a lot of cosmology, because we all kind of, as Christians, we're busy trying to fit what they were telling us. We were accepting things they were telling, but trying to fit it in Scripture instead of just reading what the Bible says plainly. And so that wasn't a battle as much back then. But again, I used to think, some of these things that they would say, oh, we know that there's planets out there, 40 million light years away that are inhabitable. Go, how do you know that? It's like, how can you know that it's inhabitable and stuff like that? So that's probably where most it came until now. Now it's a whole new.
Well, and that's the thing, and that's the segue leading into the subject matter of these last 2 days and getting into flat Earth, because all of us would agree that it's probably the upper echelon of one of the greatest lies that anyone can imagine. I was doing interviews out there, and I'm like, can you think of anything greater as a lie than this, even hypothetically speaking? So I wanted to move over to Joe again, because again, you sat in on a lot of the conference sessions, and as I sit here and listen to you, it's like more of the movies coming out. So as these questions are, I got these lists, and it's like I hear the answers, and it's like don't want to spoil the surprises. So, but it's important to me to hear from Joe, because like I said, what are you taking in? What is there anything that basically resonates where you're like, maybe I'm going to look at this more serious, or I have more researching to do? To me, it's fascinating to hear from someone that's not in agreement but wants to learn.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stuff that
Hold the mic up just a tad.
I've not. I've heard things today that I haven't thought through. So rather than jump on something quickly, I'm going to take a look at it. I want to review the DVD, and I'll have a lot of questions. I'm still trying to get my head around how the mechanics of a flat Earth and the movement of the sun and moon works. So either I'm too dumb or I haven't heard it yet where I really understand it.
I got 130 videos online you can check out.
And a website.
It's a lifetime worth of work right there. No, you know, having been involved, well, I grew up in a family. My dad was an avid reader. He was all kinds of things, but he ran for Congress one year, and we began to get all kinds of information that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. This opened the door to all the conspiracy stuff. I read, none dare call it treason, none dare call it conspiracy, and that opened, you know, a whole world. So we weren't afraid of that stuff. Well, whatever you got, I'll hear it. So I think I grew up in a family with an open mind. I knew everybody's religion better than they did. I could argue them into the corner and stop them, you know. So I wanted to know everything there was. In fact, back a few years ago, I started what I call the Institute of Omniology, which is the study of everything. So anything that becomes a major factor in society, or I think is going to become a major question, I want to look into it. And I think the question of the flat Earth is so wild to most people they can't even consider it. So I'm not looking for them to say, "Oh yeah, Joe, go look into it," because they're saying, "No, it's idiotic. Don't do it, Joe." But I don't care. I'm going to look into it. And I think these are the best guys to talk to. So what I say to people is, don't argue against something you don't understand. Go hear the people out. Go see it. These are not a bunch of dummies, except Rob here. But you know. I didn't say that.
I did.
Oh, okay. No, to me, it's important to look into things and you know, here's this side. Now there's another side, and that's part of due diligence in science, if I'm a scientist at all, is to know there's another side of the question. Then you have to find, well, who knows the other side very well? So that's the next thing is I know some guys that I think would at least respond to all that's being said. So, okay, what do you guys think? You know, how does this answer? Can you answer it or not? So, it's been great bunch of people, and some of you don't have much hair, but that's okay, you know.
I would say that we were presidents.
You got. We made sure that we didn't make.
I'm working on it.
Bob's the twins.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I mean, for sake of time, I would love to ask like tons of questions. There's just, you know, not enough time for it all, but you're in for a real treat tonight. Like, it was a real pleasure. And again, there's people that couldn't be here, and I know they're watching live, like Dr. Aaron Judkins. I know that he's watching, and he brought a lot of incredible stuff to this project. And I thought it was so incredible to bring people that not necessarily even believe in flat Earth, but they want to help with the war with exposing scientism. And it was an avenue to start this discussion with people that might not be there yet, but now they're intrigued. They're going to watch this film, and they're going to say, hey, that's starting to make sense. And then we engage in conversation. We can have those discussions. So it's like really incredible for me to bring all these people together, and the people that are watching on the live stream, you know, to be able to do the premiere and see how it all comes together. And it's interesting as, you know, ask these questions, and, you know, just when Rob was talking with Captain Kirk, I mean, you're going to see it tonight. You're going to see it and how it all came together. So I'm just kind of seeing how everything is there. You're about to see it. I'm incredibly excited about it. And it was important to me to make sure that, you know, every one of these gentlemen, everyone that was part of the film, you know, were recognized. So what I did is I got together just a little something for each one of you. I wanted to give you this here. Honestly, I really appreciate it. Basically, for anyone that can't see, it's just a plaque and saying that I'm very, very thankful. And Joe, thank you so much for all your contribution on the film. Couldn't have done it without you, Ian. Rick. So anyways, I wanted you to have this. Like I said, I'm excited for the premiere. You guys were all an integral part of it, and it's exciting. And I thank you so much. So again, we're going to do the Q&A panel. We're going to come back for the film premiere at 6:15, and then we got the award show. But anyways, you know, big applause for all these gentlemen. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys. It's good. We're good. Yeah. So anyways, thank you so much.
Yeah, you can there you go. So do I need to make another announcement?
Yeah, that's right.
Am I announcing anything else? Or can I go take a picture of this and send it to my
Well, we have a
mom?
break, and then we got the.
Watch the clip in the back.
We're gonna take a little break so we can
Yeah.
for the Q&A.
Okay, you're welcome.